We're still at 10:30. But it brings up what I was saying. It's going to bring up. I did. I
Mine
tried
says
that.
5:25.
Mine says 10:26.
Okay, so if you go to the,
You have to bring it up with the second.
Go back to, just hit the back button, Phil, and then go to. Yeah, because the big problem is that then.
I'm gonna wait. There you go. Okay. As well.
None of them work.
Oh, you are, so. The problem is it doesn't go to the side, it doesn't stay on.
Doesn't have the controls on the left, like the RTS request to speak and stuff.
And I'll shut the system down when you guys leave and I'll restart it. And hopefully when we reboot it.
Go ahead, right here to say no.
Hey, mic on. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Good evening, Santa Monica, and welcome to the November 9th, 2021 meeting of the Santa Monica City Council. Councilmember De La Torre, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and now let's call the roll.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Negrete.
Here.
Councilmember Brock.
Here.
Councilmember De La Torre. Here. Mayor Pro Tem McCowan.
Here.
And Mayor Himmelrich.
Here. And now let's call our closed session.
Okay, before we do that, I want to announce that the public comment lines are open. They have been open since 5:15. And if you want to call, the phone number is 310-312-8173. The number is 312-8173. Okay, so we have several closed session items. The first one is unfair practice charge, Administrative Team Association versus the City of Santa Monica. It's a public employment relations board. Then we have another one that's unfair practice charge, again, Administrative Team Associates versus the Santa Monica Public Employee Relations Board. Then we have Oscar De La Torre, Ellis Cerna versus the City of Santa Monica. And then we have Brian Conti, I apologize if I'm messing this up, Curante versus the City of Santa Monica. Anthony Echevarria versus the City of Santa Monica. And then we also have another unfair practice charge, Municipal Employees Association versus the City of Santa Monica, Public Employment Relations Board. And then we have River Lunn versus the City of Santa Monica. Then we have conference with labor negotiator, and the agency designated representative is the Chief People Officer, Lori Gentles, and Laura Cotley. Outside counsel is Liebert Cassidy Whitmore. The bargaining unions are the ATA, the IBT, California Teamster Local 911, FEMA Santa Monica Fire Executive Management Association, Fire Santa Monica Firefighters Local 1109 IFF, MEA, MTA AFSME Local 4819, Management Team Association, the Public Attorneys Legal Support Staff Union, the Public Attorneys Union, POA Santa Monica Police Officers Association, SMART TD, the International Association of Sheet, Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Division Local 1785, the Supervisory Team Association, and the Coalition of Santa Monica City Employees. Then we have another unfair practice charge, the Santa Monica Police Officers Association versus the City of Santa Monica, Public Employment Relations Board. And then finally, we have another existing litigation, and this is, I do apologize, NMS 1539 LLC versus the City of Santa Monica. And we have no callers.
So if anybody wanted to call in on our closed session agenda, the number is 310-312-8173. We have no callers at the moment, and on that note, let me turn to City Attorney Lawrence and ask him when he thinks we will return from our closed session.
Certainly, it'll take at least until 6:30. It easily could take until 7.
So should we say 7 o'clock? And yes, and I had an excellent idea from a member of the public, which is that in the future, when we come out of closed session, we should send a notice out to people, right to our list that we send notices of the agenda to, and say we're out of closed session. Is that doable?
I don't know.
I know it is.
We send the agenda to?
You know, when you send us the note, you know, when you send to everybody the notice saying, for instance, that all comments have been posted to the agenda, and that goes to everybody who gets notice of the agenda?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You just say, council is back from
Distribution,
closed
okay.
session.
Esther, did you hear that?
Esther?
Yes, I did.
Is that
Yes, I
doable,
did.
or is that difficult?
So,
No, that'll be fine. Yes.
all right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is like, dear God. Okay, then we are adjourned to closed session. Thank you very much. She says, oh, whatever you want. I love it. That's okay.
I don't even know what she looks like. I have a vision in my mind.
get back. Hey, I mean, there's a UCLA game on. I had to give up my tickets. This is how much.
Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can man all in studio web.
Okay, so everyone's, shall, are we ready to roll now? Good, okay. Then, welcome back, Santa Monica, to the, what's today? Today is the November 9th, 2021 meeting of the Santa Monica City Council. And I'm going to turn to City Attorney Lawrence and ask him if he has any report out.
Yes. In its closed session, the city council discussed each of the items on the agenda. That's items from 1A through 1J. There's no reportable action on any item with the exception of 1I, which is existing litigation, and in particular, the unfair labor practice charge filed by the Santa Monica Police Officers Association versus the City of Santa Monica before the Public Employment Relations Board, case number LA-CE-1535M. And in that matter, there is a proposed settlement. To recap, on July 23rd, 2021, the SMPOA, that is the Santa Monica Police Officers Association, filed an unfair labor practice charge with the California Public Employees Relations Board, better known as PERB, P-E-R-B. The charge alleges that the city had an obligation under the state's Myers-Milius-Brown Act to meet and confer with the SMPOA prior to the City Council enacting Chapter 2.50 of the Santa Monica Municipal Code, which established the Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission, and that the city failed to comply with the obligation to meet and confer. The SMPOA and the city have reached an agreement subject to approval by the City Council to settle this PERB charge. Both sides agree that the City Council will consider at a future City Council meeting proposed amendments to Chapter 2.50. If the proposed changes are adopted, the PERB complaint filed by the SMPOA will be dismissed with prejudice. The proposed changes to the ordinance are intended to mainly clarify the ordinance, and in doing so, they will remove the SMPOA's concerns that were raised in its PERB charge. The key changes to the ordinance are that Section 2.50, 020D, it allows for the adding of one ex officio member to the commission. This ex officio member will be non-voting. That person will be selected by the SMPOA and the police chief. If those two cannot agree, then there is no ex officio member appointed to the commission. The person who would be selected has to satisfy all the other requirements of a commissioner, not be a city employee, not be a member of the police department. Another change to Section 2.50.020F deals with training. Anybody who is going forward, anybody who would be appointed to the commission has to complete the required training within 6 months of appointment. Current members of the commission have until May 31 of 2022 to complete their training. Another section that is subject to the proposed settlement is Section 2.50.030A2. It clarifies that the Inspector General may gather information regarding ongoing disciplinary investigations, but will not participate in those investigations. Section 2.50.030A4 clarifies that the Inspector General may not disclose to the Commission or to any third parties SMPD disciplinary or personnel records, except as permitted by state or federal law. The next section, 0.040B, clarifies that the Commission will not participate in individual disciplinary investigations. However, the Commission may refer individuals to the SMPD so that the individual can make a complaint. The section 2.50.040D, the Commission can make recommendations to the City Council regarding state and federal law. Another section, 2.50.050A, clarifies that the city's annual budget, subject to the City Council approval, will contain funds for the Inspector General to be able to perform its duties. The last two sections, 2.50.070, the City Manager, Police Chief, and SMPOA are to be given 72-hour written notice of any written reports that the Commission may be considering sending to the City Council. And finally, and I know this has been long, section 2.50.080B, the Commission's initial recommendations report shall be provided to the City Manager, Police Chief, SMPOA at least 72 hours before the Commission will consider it. The settlement also includes, the city has agreed to pay the SMPOA $5,000. And again, if the proposed changes that I just highlighted are approved at a future City Council meeting, the SMPOA will dismiss its PERB charge with prejudice. So with that said, I ask that the City Council approve this settlement.
Move settlement.
Second.
Moved by Himmelrich, seconded by Davis. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember De La Torre,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowen.
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
And Mayor Himmelrich.
Yes, so that passes 6-0 on a motion by Himmelrich, seconded by Davis. And we're on to our two items.
We have our two item, and let me announce for the public that the lines are open on items 2A and 2B. Again, the phone number to call in is 310-312-8173. The first item is proclamation designating November 14th through the 20th, 2021 as United Against Hate Week in Santa Monica. And at this point, we don't have any callers.
And Councilmember De La Torre will be doing the proclamation.
Yes. Typically, do we read a couple of whereases and then go to the now therefore? Or?
You can do it however you want. That's why you're reading it.
Okay, great. Well, I have a proclamation here. This is, as United Against Hate Week in Santa Monica. So I'll read as, whereas the United States is a nation of immigrants whose strength comes from its diversity, and whereas the Constitution enshrines equality on all individuals, regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, or political views. And whereas the City of Santa Monica is dedicated to preventing and opposing hate and intolerance in our community, the City Council in 2017 adopted a resolution embracing diversity and clarifying the city's role in enforcing federal immigration law. And whereas we seek to join other Los Angeles area, California, and communities across the country, United Against Hate Week as an important step in bridging divisions and strengthening our communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on behalf of members of the City Council, we do hereby take great pleasure in proclaiming the week of November 14th through the 20th, 2021 as United Against Hate Week in the City of Santa Monica.
Thank you, Councilmember De La Torre. And I think we all are against hate up here, yes? And now we have our city managers.
We do have a caller for that item, 2A.
Okay.
Welcome, Pierre. You're in the meeting and your time starts now.
Good evening, Mayor Himmelrich and City Council. I'm Pierre Prasad-Learn, and I'm here representing the members of the newly forming Coalition of Asian and Pacific Employees of Santa Monica, or CAPE SM. Thank you for adopting a proclamation for United Against Hate Week at tonight's council meeting. CAPE SM was formed this year when Asian American / Pacific Islander, or AAPI staff across the organization collaborated to honor AAPI Heritage Month. We have grown in membership and are committed to sharing our collective voice to advocate on behalf of AAPI issues, create strong and collaborative alliances with other marginalized communities, build better cultural understanding, and celebrate our heritage that spans over 30 cultures within the AAPI community. In the wake of the alarming spike in violent hate crimes against Asian Americans, the action of uniting against hate of any kind is of utmost relevance to us. Though Santa Monica is known to be a progressive city that embraces differences in body and mind, we have much work ahead to build true equity, be more inclusive, and eradicate the lasting impacts of systematic racism in our city. Many Asian Americans face explicit and implicit bias regularly, both at work and in our neighborhoods. A recent LA County Commission on Human Relations report reflected a 76% increase in anti-Asian hate crimes in the past year. At a CAPE SM meeting hosted this summer, 61% of Asian city staff attendees felt their career trajectory has been impacted by racial bias. We can and must do better. CAPE SM fully supports the symbolism in asking people to stand up to hate for 1 week, yet we hope that our community will join this council in standing up to hate every week and every day. We beseech council to continue to prioritize and invest in DEI initiatives and services for our community as well as for our city staff. Together, we can defeat hate in our city and create a more vibrant and inclusive Santa Monica now and for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize. And so are there any other speakers on either 2A or 2B?
Not at the moment.
Thank you. So take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few announcements about some pretty special celebrations in the community this week, kicking off on Thursday with Veterans Day celebration. This will be with the Los Angeles Army Recruitment Battalion and the California Army National Guard, and this will be at North Beach Lot 1, 1550 Pacific Coast Highway, and it'll be on the city's YouTube page. I also want to, of course, invite the community to the Annenberg Community Beach House on November 13th and 14th to experience 2 walking labyrinths in the sand by artist Lars Howlett. And so you can come by and experience the temporary installations. And we're really looking forward to that community gathering. And then also, I just wanted to quickly announce that we know we have the second reading for SB 1383, and we're in the very beginning stages of doing our community outreach for that, but we do have some information on our city website that will go up if the ordinance is adopted, helping our community understand how they can start to comply with that ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. White. And now we are back to our consent calendar.
So we have a consent calendar. All items will be considered and approved in one motion unless removed by a council member for discussion, and the lines are open. They've been open, by the way.
The lines have been open, so let me remind everybody just of the number, which is 310-312-8173. And so if you want to call on consent, on any matter on consent, please do so. I am pulling item G, since it is, wait, is that right? Yeah, 3G, which is the addition of the nepotism provision, which is targeted at my husband. So I'll be stepping out for that. And does any other council member have any other matters to pull? Councilmember Brock.
I'm not sure if I want to pull the item, but 3C, I wonder if I could say 2 sentences about it, or do I need to pull it?
Well, you have
Joe?
to pull it.
Pull it?
Yep.
Okay, let's pull it then.
So does anyone want?
I'll move the other items.
Okay, so remainder of the consent. calendar other than items 3C and 3G were moved by Brock, seconded by McCowan. So may we have a roll call vote, please?
Before we do that, we do have a caller on this item.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Esther.
Welcome, Patricia Hoffman. You're in the meeting and your time starts now.
Thank you. Patricia Hoffman here, affordable housing advocate. I'm calling to oppose the unceremonious dumping of Michael Soloff from the Housing Commission. I do not oppose adopting a nepotism policy for all future appointments. I'm calling to remind you that no sitting commissioner has ever been removed during their terms without good cause. I would hate to see that practice start now. Specifically, Commissioner Soloff has been one of the most effective advocates for affordable housing in our city. He has been an exemplary member of the Housing Commission. He should not be the one person removed from the commission through no fault of his own. There's a long history of close relatives being appointed here, and there is no urgency now. Michael is a true believer in the cause of affordable housing. The commission has made great strides, including the popular pod program through his services. Implementing the policy now rather than allowing Michael to continue to serve out the remaining 7 months of his term is not good governance. It's a travesty. It's an unprincipled poke in the eye to someone who's been an outstanding unpaid advocate for those in need in our community. Michael was not appointed by his wife, nor was he reappointed by his wife. He is not receiving any income or benefit by serving. Implementing a policy that affects only one person in the absence of an emergency is unjust by definition. I urge you to allow Michael Soloff to serve out the remainder of his term. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huffman. Are there any other callers?
We have one more caller.
Thank you.
Welcome, Denise Barton. You're in the meeting and your time starts now.
Good evening. Let me begin by saying how happy I am that the city of Santa Monica is finally saying that nepotism is no longer allowed on the city council's boards and commissions. So we can only hope the city clerk will do her job and weed them out of the application process for boards and commissions. But you know I have my doubts due to the city clerk not being able to weed lobbyist Leorna Camner from the Housing Commission application process, unless, of course, Mel Himmerich or her husband on her behalf was coordinating with her to get the higher than usual arena numbers for the city. And what do you want to bet the city staff won't have a conflict of interest resolution until around the time Lorna Camner's term is almost over, even though she should be removed immediately because she's a lobbyist as executive/managing director of Abundant Housing LA. Then on the subject of the Metropolitan Water District Board, there really do need to be term limits for this position. I mean, don't you say you want as many residents to be able to serve as possible on boards and commissions? Well, permanently appointing Judy Abdo to that position doesn't say that. And finally, the Housing Commission had this resolution on as item 3D for the October 21st, 2021 meeting. But due to the train wreck those meetings have become with Renee Buchanan as the chair, she didn't get past item 3A. But nonetheless, I'm sure you'll approve this, only further amplifying the dysfunction of the city of Santa Monica. Thank you.
Are there any other calls?
No more callers.
Good. Let's have a roll call vote on items on the consent calendar other than items 3C and 3G.
Okay. Councilmember De La Torre,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowan,
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Himmerich.
Yes, so that passes 6-0. Everyone push your buttons. Okay, and now Councilmember Brock, item 3C.
Yeah, and I don't need a staff report on this. There's a lot of money involved in this and a lot of bids. Huh? Oh. You mean I didn't turn a microphone on? That's unlike me. Okay, so The bids, this is a large amount. It appears that it was a very convoluted procedure. And while I received extensive feedback from city staff, thank you all, city staff, on this item. And I understand the process now, but I would mention it seems sloppy. And I'm not sure it's the city staff's fault. It may just be the circumstances, but it seems that we can do better. The good thing is the last system lasted 27 years. So I assume we'll be 25 years before we need a new system. So we'll probably be fine, and I will move to approve the item.
Second. Let's have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCollum?
Yes.
Councilmember Brock?
Yes.
Councilmember De La Torre?
Yes.
And Mayor Himmelrich.
Yes, so that passes 6-0. And now I need to step out. So Mayor Pro Tem McCollum will be leading the meeting.
Okay, 3G is adoption of resolution amending the policies for city boards, commissions, committees, task force, and regional advisory boards to include a nepotism policy and repeal resolution 11338.
Do we have a motion?
Who made the motion? Was
There's De La Torre. Is there a second? Second. We're ready for a roll call vote.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, have some discussion.
There,
can,
discussion?
yes,
I
sure.
think there's going to be a lot of discussion on this item, or at
Okay,
least
then
I'll
do-
have some.
Oh, okay. Feel free.
That almost
That's
went.
why I asked.
No, it's almost so fast. I was like,
Because
wait a minute. Okay, so how do we want to, should I just go through the items that I,
Yeah.
You
have
have the
issues
floor,
with?
Councilmember Brock. Feel free.
so while there are a lot of good provisions in this, there are concerns by residents and concerns by people I've heard throughout the city about some of the parts of this resolution. So I'm just going to go through each piece of the resolution and give you the part that I think needs to be amended or changed or something added to it. And I guess we can go back and then see if that becomes an amendment that's friendly or if a substitute
For the
motion is
record,
needed.
for the record.
Yes.
I just want to make sure it's clear that I had asked in advance if you had anything you wanted to say, just so I would know to go on a consent item issue. I know it was pulled for the reasons it was pulled by the mayor because she had to recuse.
I was talking about 3C.
Okay, because
Which I just had 2
specifically
sentences I
asked and I
wanted.
would have.
Didn't know.
Okay.
It's not a big deal.
Okay,
We're
great.
going through it. Okay, on section 1B, I've been asked if the applications can remain online after the person is appointed, so that people, once they're appointed, you can still see their application. You can still, once someone's appointed to a commission, someone can still look and go, oh, this is why they were appointed. In G, yes.
Okay, people will respond at the end of all those questions, or did we want to respond to each one? Because, okay.
Okay.
All right.
In G, this is the part about ineligible status and the legal status that's involved. And the question is, why is this the only clause that's effective tonight? Why not effective at the end of their current service? And how are we defining legal status? So legal status becomes very narrowly defined here when maybe it should be more widely defined or not defined as narrowly at all. So there are 2 questions there. Why is this the only clause that's effective immediately? Why not at the end of their current service so they would not be able to be reappointed
And you said
to a board or
G?
commission? This is G, I
I
believe.
don't see any, Which part
Effective
says-
upon adoption of this resolution, a
where-
person is ineligible to serve on all city boards, commissions, committees, and task forces. That person is a close family relative of a current council member. The
Okay.
term relative means wife, husband, registered domestic partner, son, daughter, mother, father, brother, or sister.
Okay, sorry, I thought you had referenced a legal term that
No, I'm just going through this.
Okay.
In 2D, I have a question about clean beaches and ocean parcel committee and task forces where they may serve for an indefinite number of 2-year terms. If we are in other cases having term limits, why suddenly are clean beaches and ocean parcel committee and task forces an indefinite number of terms? Shouldn't they also be capped? And so, in other words, why is there a favored nation status for those? On number 4, what?
No. Yeah, the phrase.
Huh?
Just the phrase.
Okay. Well, I come from the film business. There's a point here where it says in number, well, now I've lost my number, D4. Members must wait at least 1 year or 2 years to meet the goal of terming out commissions before they apply for another one. I think we decided on 1 year. There are questions by residents about why it's not 2 years. I'm personally fine with 1 year, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Members of the County Vector Control District, and I have a great reminder of one of our college trustees also serving on vector control and coming to the city boards and commissions dinner in a bumblebee suit, I believe, which was classic. But it says they shall serve an additional 2-year term and may serve additional terms of 2 or 4 years each at the discretion of the city council. My same point as before, there should be a term limit for that. There needs to be a maximum amount of terms. The LA County Metropolitan Water District, indefinite number of 4-year terms. I don't want any of the commissions, and I think that was our point in part of the review of commissions, is to stop commissioners from becoming someone's personal fiefdom. In case of the water board, for instance, there needs to be term limits, because otherwise we're not able to get a varied amount of residents involved in our city and involved in areas they might be interested in. In number 9, the question was the templates and the agenda and minutes templates are going to be prescribed by the city clerk. I don't know if they were actually attached. So I'm not sure we're able to vote on that if we can't see the potential templates. On 10F, I'd like to add a phrase after commission task force members. This is a summary of attendance that should include all of our regional advisory board appointments as well. They shouldn't be left out. So in other words, they could become a commissioner or one of those board appointments, and we may never know if they actually attend the meeting. So I think what I'm asking mostly is that everyone has the same rules, that there aren't exceptions. And Section 11, the annual work plan, Section 11 assumes that all commissions have adequate city staff in order to comply with this regulation, but we've been in a situation where we haven't had the staff. So I am concerned that the city clerk or the city council may say, you guys didn't do your homework the way you were supposed to, and they say, but we've had no staff assistance, we're civilians, we're in here once or twice a month, help. And we have to be able to provide them that help. So I'd like that on Section 11. Some sort of phrase be inputted that allows either a time for this to take effect, because it won't be able to take effect, for instance, this January. Or that there is a clause that says that the commission support staff for each commission will help with that work plan. So those are my comments. et al. I know that may be somewhat confusing, and I can list them again separately. But I think the questions are, one question that I brought up before, which is controversial, is whether we have one instance of this in the city. We have a housing commissioner who would be retired immediately. And the question on that is, he has 7 months left in his term. Has the caller, Ms. Hoffman, said, is that unfair? Because that's not normally what we would do. And then the other things are establishing term limits for our regional boards, things like that. And I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Councilmember Brock. I saw Councilmember Davis's hand first, and then I'll come back to Councilmember De La Torre.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to go through these things and express my opinion. I don't have a problem with leaving people's application after their appointment's up, but I think it needs to be clear in a separate section, because it does get confusing when we see a lot of applications, and if some of them are people who were already appointed, it might be confusing to people. The question of Housing Commissioner Soloff, and I do want to disagree with something Mayor Himmelrich said, that her husband was the target of this. This was not in any way directed at her or her husband, in my opinion anyway. It's just having an anti-nepotism policy is considered generally good governance. The thing is, if you believe nepotism is bad, it's bad now. It's not bad in 7 months. This is not meant to target any particular person. If we had 14 commissioners who were close relatives of council members, they should all leave. I think that if we're going to have a policy, that it should be a policy that is effective immediately. And if we aren't, then we're basically saying we are condoning nepotism, which I think is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do with this resolution. There were 2 committees that were singled out for no term limits. One is the tenant member, and it's not the entire commission, by the way, it's just the tenant member of the Housing Commission. It's my understanding that has been a very difficult slot to fill, which may explain why that's been exempted here, although maybe the clerk can shed some light on that. I know for a fact that the Clean Beaches and Ocean Parcel Tax Citizens Committee, and that's one committee, that's not 2, is very hard to fill. We've had tremendous difficulty filling that. It's an oversight committee. It doesn't do a lot of substantive work, and quite honestly, people just aren't that interested in it. With regard to vector control and NWD, our regional representations, the question is, why are they exempt? They're exempt because seniority on both of those bodies depends on the length of time of service. For example, Ms. Abdo has been on the MWD board for I don't know how long, and she is just now ready to step into a leadership role. If we want to have any effective representation on these boards, which consist of tens of people, these are not small boards, being able to have representatives of Santa Monica serve in leadership positions is crucial to bring our issues before those boards. But the only way they will serve in leadership positions is if they serve for what seems like comparatively, a lengthy amount of time. And that's why they are exempted, so that they have the opportunity to move into leadership positions and do a more effective and better job of representing the city. The templates for the reports, I don't know why those would have, that's micromanaging. It's not our job to decide what the template should look like. I think staff is perfectly able to develop templates. And then the work plans with city staff. I don't have a problem with that, but I do want to disabuse people if they have the impression that somehow our city staff is leaving the commissions on their own and saying, hey, we're not going to help you. You go do your work and let us know how it goes. One of the issues we have now in these more austere times is that our city staff is spending dozens and dozens and dozens of hours with these commissions. They have not abandoned them, and they're doing so at the cost of other work that other members of the community would like them to be doing. So while, to the extent we want to say something that city staff should assist in the preparation of work plans, we have to recognize, one, that will mean there are other things that city staff cannot do if they're busy doing work plans, and 2, I think they would do that in any event. But if we put a very specific requirement on them, then we need to be prepared to hear from our community that there are other things these staff members are probably not doing. So as the seconder of the motion for me, except for the fact that continuing to list the application after appointment, so long as that continues to be separate and clear that that person has in fact been appointed, none of these are friendly to me.
So before Councilmember De La Torre, I saw the city attorney's hand, so I want to go ahead.
Yes, while technically the entire resolution is before you in order to make the one change, the thing that actually is before you is the addition of the nepotism policy. If the council wants to revisit any other item that's included in this, you should give directions to staff and we'll come back at a later time. But right now, the nepotism policy is what's before you. So we're amending just one provision. Before you is an amendment to one provision. It doesn't open up everything in the resolution. So this has been noticed just for the nepotism policy, not for how you deal with the vector control, how you deal with the Metropolitan Water Board or any other provision. But if you care to give after you decide however you want to decide on this resolution, if you want to give direction to staff to come back on other things, you're free to do that. Okay.
Can I also note that this resolution that you guys is worked on right now, other than the nepotism, all of this resolution was what you guys previously voted on to come into effect in January. This was not relative for right now, but this is the new resolution that was supposed to go into effect in January, which is a whole nother conversation after the boards and commission ad hoc comes back. So as interim city attorney said, this is really just about the nepotism. That's the only thing that we were adding to this resolution. And I would highly recommend that you either give us direction now, or you can wait until the ad hoc item comes up as 13B and provide direction then, because I think we're asking for direction.
Can I ask a clarifying question, though? If we've already voted on the other parts of this, then would it have to come back pursuant to a motion for reconsideration by someone? If we've already voted on the other parts of the resolution?
Well, at this point, it would just be direction, and we would have to come back. And because it's a resolution, we would either repeal this whole thing or we would make amendments to it.
But have we already voted on?
Yes, this was approved back in, I believe, April, when this came before you, when we brought the community working group recommendations. And so when you ask about the attachments for the templates, that was what you guys approved back in April. So all of this was previously approved. So we had a temporary resolution to continue until the end of this year, and then now we have. And this is the full regular resolution.
But if we already, I guess I'm just asking, and maybe the city attorney can clear it up, if we've already voted on everything except.
So as he was saying, the only addition for this one that's different is.
So would that have to come back? You keep saying give direction. We can't just give direction to reconsider something that we've already voted on. Wouldn't it have to come back pursuant to the rules for a motion for reconsideration, which means a member of the prevailing side has to bring it back within a year, because we're within a year.
Well, this resolution, so that's why my suggestion is to wait until 13B and give this as direction to the ad hoc to consider to bring back as part of, because when you guys come back with the boards and commission, all of this is going to probably change anyway.
But if I'll leave it as but if we already voted on it.
I understand your question. The question is, under the council rules, an item to be changed, which would be a reconsideration, can be changed within a year at the request of somebody on the prevailing side. That's the general rule. Whether that applies to changing a law or not is an interesting legal question. I don't know if it does. But anyway, and maybe this is a moot point. I'm guessing, I wasn't here then, but these resolutions are usually unanimously approved. So theoretically, everybody's on the prevailing side. So it might be a moot point. But usually councils are given the ability to amend their laws and resolutions without having to go through the reconsideration process.
Okay, so first, Councilmember De La Torre was next, so I just want to make sure he doesn't have anything. Given everything that you just heard, do you still have comments? Okay, you go for it.
And maybe Denise, you can remind me of this, but I know that one of the directives that we gave, and I just wanted to hear from you, your interpretation of the directive regarding like how for boards and commissions, for us, how we can gather baseline data to understand.
Okay, we will be coming back. We've already.
We have that. Okay.
Yeah, we've already done that.
Cool. We're good on that. Thank you. And then the other thing that I wanted to raise, I do want to say that I know we're only dealing with item G here regarding the nepotism.
That's it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to say is that I think it is unfortunate, that it seems that one member of our Housing Commission would be affected, and I do agree with the previous caller, Ms. Hoffman, that said that Mr. Soloff has done a great job. But I do agree also that if we're going to have a rule, that it must be applied, across the board for everyone, so that we are fair in the application of our policies. But I started thinking, the issue is really is like the sort of the conflict, as we would call a conflict, because the husband, wife, registered domestic partner, son, daughter, mother, father, brother, and sister of a council member would have a hard time sort of distancing themselves, or it seems like they could be compromised, right, because of their relationship with the council member. But I started thinking if it would be appropriate to add sort of an employee of a council member or a business partner of a council member. Maybe we would add those either two categories, because wouldn't that also be a way to compromise an individual serving on a board or commission, that they work for you? I mean, how would they vote against something that if I supported something and my employee, is on the board and commission, it's hard for them to sort of go against me, right? It's sort of, they're compromised, for lack of a better term. So I thought that maybe we would add that also, that you can't be an employee of a council member and you can't be a business partner of a council member. And I wanted to know if, how my colleagues felt about adding those two categories to the list.
Councilmember Negrete is next, and then Councilmember Brock, you're up if you still have go ahead.
I don't have any problem with what Councilmember De La Torre just brought up. I do have a question, though, as it pertains to the nepotism. So just to be clear, if there was an amendment to say that because this is new, that if there's a member who's going to be terminating within 7 months, and it sounds like it would be effective January, this member would be off presumably, May? Do we know the date? Do we need to make an amendment to say that? So that's what the amendment would have to be to this, that we're asking to amend that it not be immediate, but rather allow this. It sounds like it's one individual to.
Yeah, I don't think a motion's been made. Has there? Oh, there was. Sorry, a motion and a second. So you'd have to make a friendly amendment, just addressing whatever particulars of the current nepotism policy, and then Councilmember De La Torre, if he wants to add, if that's accepted, it's accepted. Councilmember De La Torre, if he wants to add an amendment related to some of the other qualifiers that he mentioned, then that's also an option.
I'm going to try this, and you guys can lead me in the right direction. So when this originally got brought up, I agree that if we make a policy, I was new to this too, that it makes sense for it to happen right away, given the circumstances and the timing. And I know maybe this isn't always the best way to address it, but it sounds like we're talking about a matter of 4 months where someone would be finishing out a term that they were on, is it correct? So I would like to ask if we could make an amendment that this go into effect and anyone who's on there expires their position and then going forward. So they get to fill out the remainder of their position.
So I think what I hear you saying, and this interim city attorney can step in,
Clean
you're
that up.
asking if an amendment is friendly to the maker, that if, and the seconder, yeah, that we basically would allow those currently serving to serve out the remainder of their term.
Yes.
Councilmember De La Torre?
You know, I just, like I said earlier, I just feel that we should apply the rule as soon as we feel that, we have the votes to pass this policy. We should apply it to everybody now versus grandfathering in people. It just sends the wrong message, unfortunately. And like I said, I agree with everyone that Mr. Soloff is a great commissioner. But I just feel that it would send the wrong message that if this council makes an exception at this point.
As I've already stated, it's unfriendly to me for the reasons, It's unfriendly to me for the reasons that Councilmember De La Torre stated. And I do want to emphasize that Michael Soloff has done a tremendous job as a housing commissioner. This is nothing about him, nor is this targeted at him. But if we're going to have an anti-nepotism policy, then we should have one, and we should have it now.
Okay.
Am I supposed to
Is that
comment to that, or do we?
Well,
Because
it's
I guess
definitely
it's
not friendly, but you can add some comments if you'd like.
I hear everybody and I understand both sides of it, and I just, given the circumstances of this specific situation, it felt like it was the right thing to do to let someone finish it out, because it's not advisory in the sense where there's finances or whatnot involved. So just to be clear, I made the friendly, but it's not friendly to.
It wasn't accepted.
It wasn't
by the mayor
accepted.
and secretary,
Okay, moving
yes.
on.
Interim city attorney, Mr. Lawrence.
The other way for you to go, is you can now make a substitute motion, adding your provision, seeing if it has a second. Or you could stop right now.
It's getting exciting.
I'd like to make a substitute.
I'm making a
motion.
substitute motion to add the provision that we allow existing members finish out their term.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion. Is there any discussion on the substitute, or can we just go to a roll call vote? Oh, is there any discussion on the substitute motion? Anyone? Okay.
And this is, repeat the substitute
The
motion.
substitute motion, as I understood it,
You did.
is that anyone currently serving would be able to serve out the remainder of their term prior to this nepotism policy of the resolution taking effect.
Well, wait a minute.
So I do-
The resolution would take effect.
Right, sorry, the nepotism,
No, the
Oh.
resolution would take effect immediately.
But it would
We
include-
couldn't, in the interim, appoint somebody's husband, mother, father,
Right.
daughter.
Right.
But that anyone currently serving would be allowed.
Her mic.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Davis, you are absolutely correct.
That is correct. So the resolution by operation of law takes effect immediately, but would be, under the substitute motion, there would be a provision that the nepotism provision effectively does not apply to sitting board or commission members.
Who shall be allowed to complete their current term. If you go this way, we will have language.
Does that make sense, Councilmember Brock? What the substitute motion is?
Well, but the substitute motion, I hear that, which I would support the substitute motion, but I have substantive issues with the rest of the resolution, as I've already detailed.
And-
So if you're saying you would then, if we approve the substitute motion, which I approve of,
Yes.
but that would allow the entire resolution to go into effect, then I would still be against it, because I believe the term limit items that I mentioned need to be put into place, and on the ad hoc, if I miss that, it's my fault. So
can I?
So my question, Mr. Lawrence, would be, is there a way to No, there isn't, Kristen? There's no way to dissect the resolution and accomplish it with the changes or the changes at least I've recommended being voted on, not as a possible direction later, because the direction later to me doesn't mean it is absolute.
So really,
Mayor Pro Tem, I know you want to interrupt me. Go
yes,
ahead.
yes. So I think what the
Or
city
am I
attorney,
misunderstanding?
I think there's just a general misunderstanding. So we're going to try to clear this up, and Joe's going to do a really good job of it. But I just want to say first that what the interim city attorney said previously is that this resolution, which was already passed by us, I believe unanimously, in April,
And we have
is only here before us tonight to deal with the nepotism policy amendment to this resolution. So we cannot, because that's all that's agendized, and because we would want the mayor and Councilmember Parra to also be part of that larger discussion, we cannot do what you want to do tonight. We can, however, after we clean up this vote, talk about it in the 13 item that is agendized, maybe bring it back at another time. But
Okay, the way I read it was amending the policies for city boards, commissions, committees, task forces, and regional advisory boards to include the nepotism policy and repealing resolution number 11338. So you're saying this is very narrowly defined. That's what I see both city attorneys shaking their head and letting me know that I need to be quiet or figure this out in a different way. So, and I want to make it really clear that we're putting a nepotism policy in 147 years after the city was founded. And we have had instances of nepotism probably through the ages. So I support fully an anti-nepotism ordinance on the city books. Make no mistake about that. But at the same time, I look at it and say, you know, we haven't had a policy for 146, 147 years. Now we're finally going to have a policy. I'm not sure whether or not kicking someone off a commission 6 months before his term expires is really just. And the argument that says, my God, we're going to finally act on nepotism, we have to do it immediately as an urgent matter. I think there is room to have some flexibility in this for the good of residents who have been involved all these years. And in this particular case, the commissioner we're talking about was a commissioner before his spouse was elected to the city council. So look, I'll support it, provided, yes, the 13 item, we will come back and talk about term limits and try and clean up some of the issues that I am worried about long term.
okay, is there any more discussion on the substitute motion? Okay, so I just had some comments that I was going to just add in the regular motion, but since we're here at the substitute, I'll do them now. I'm incredibly uncomfortable with the fact that this has been so overly personalized. You know, I like to think myself a friend of the commissioner who's been named all too many times here. That may change. That may have changed, given what I'm hearing up here. But this is precisely why we cannot target a policy or when it takes effect based on one person. I don't understand this. And the idea that we've gone 124 years does not make me feel better that we go 7 more months, because there are so many policies on the books in so many places that if you allowed them to go 1 more day based on an argument, well, it's been policy for 124 years, it can go on for a little. And I mean, we're talking about not the housing commissioner member, but we're talking about policies that have affected people's lives, not this one, but just this concept of, because it's been allowed to persist and we never dealt with it, let's just keep going until someone we all like, and I 100% agree that Commissioner Soloff is one of the most effective commissioners that commission has ever seen. I believe what he is doing, the work he is doing, it is a yeoman's task. And we are not going to find a replacement for him that is him, or even up to his standard. I don't believe. However, I either believe that nepotism should not exist in the city, or I don't. And so I cannot support this substitute motion for those reasons and reasons I've previously stated. It breaks my heart. The fact that people are calling me as if I've lost friends over is absurdity, because these are all well-meaning people who I believe that nepotism is wrong. So that's where I stand on this. And I'll leave it at that. Councilmember Brock, I see your hand.
And by and large, I agree with what you said. And I'm not necessarily wed to Commissioner Soloff, as his name is now. He's the topic of this. But when this nepotism policy was first broached in a 13 item in June or July, it was targeted. It was targeted at a potential planning commissioner to keep that person off a commission. And it felt at the time that it was a way to hit two birds with one stone. So I believe it was politicized at the outset. However, I support the policy. So, but I believe it was politicized. So look it, I'm fine with voting whatever way we vote right now on it. And I have I'm not a friend of Michael Soloff. So, no, but I'm just saying, he's not my, bro. So I don't have a personal stake in it, except that I think it's wrong to remove someone when there's not just cause, when he's been on the commission since 2013. At any time in the last 7 years, the council members could have brought a nepotism policy up and didn't. So I'm glad we're bringing it up now. I hope we'll pass something. But I just wanted that to be clear.
Thank you, Councilmember Brock. Are we ready for a roll call vote?
So I just want to make sure I have it all right. So this is the substitute motion by Councilmember Negrete, seconded by Councilmember Brock, to amend the resolution to allow anyone currently serving on a board, commission, or task force to be able to serve until their term expires. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and start the vote. Councilmember Davis.
No.
Councilmember Negrete.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowen.
No.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Councilmember De La Torre.
Oh, yes.
No.
Okay. So that fails. So we'll go back to the original motion. So the original motion was made by Councilmember De La Torre and seconded by Councilmember Davis. I'm sorry, hold on a second. No. Okay, let me go ahead and do the roll call vote. I do apologize.
No problem.
Okay. Councilmember De La Torre. So this is on the original motion.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowen.
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
The motion passes. We can welcome Mayor Himmelrich back to take over for this hot mess.
I'll second that.
Okay, so next we have, I'll wait for the mayor. Okay. So next we have the second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending Municipal Code Section 7.04.610 for sewer capping, and this is a second reading.
Move adoption.
Do I hear a second? Moved by Davis, seconded by Brock. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowen.
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
And Mayor Himmerich.
Yes, and that passes 6-0.
Next, we have item 7B, which is a second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending Municipal Code Section 5.46 to comply with Senate Bill 1383 mandate on recycling of organic materials. And again, this is a second reading.
Do I hear a motion? I
Make
hear
a motion.
Councilmember Negrete moves.
Second
Do I
it.
hear a second?
Second.
Moved by Negrete, seconded by Davis. May we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowen.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes.
And Mayor Himmerich.
Yes. So that passes 6-0. And now, moving right ahead, we're
We're on 13A.
13A.
Okay. Request of Mayor Pro Tem McCowen and Councilmember Davis that council direct staff to take necessary steps to have the city join in the recent petition filed by Earth Justice to urge the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to initiate a nationwide ban of lead aviation gasoline and to appeal the city's congressional representatives to advocate for the United States Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration, and Environmental Protection Agency to stop the sale of lead aviation fuel and to expedite the approval process for an alternative to lead fuel, aviation fuel. And I just want to announce that the lines are open for callers.
And let me announce the number again. If you want to call in on the leaded gas item 13A, the number is 310-312-8173. Do we have any callers?
Do we have any callers?
No callers.
And the lines are open. And the lines are open for 13B as well, 310-312-8173. Council Member Davis, I guess you should announce it while we're waiting for people to call
All right.
or discuss it, whatever.
Sure. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We have received a number of emails from people in the community who are concerned about the continued use of leaded aviation gas, particularly since we do have an airport within the boundaries of Sunset Park. So the purpose of this is to have the city join in the recent petition filed by Earth Justice to urge the U.S. EPA to initiate a nationwide ban of leaded aviation gasoline, which of course would include Santa Monica Airport, and also for us to appeal to our congressional representatives through our federal lobbyists to advocate for the United States Department of Transportation, the FAA, and the EPA to stop the sale of leaded aviation fuel and to expedite the approval process for alternative fuels. I think we should note that at COP26 today, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg did commit to having an emissions-free aviation system. And so this is certainly part of a trend. I think that we, as we usually are, should be on the leading edge of encouraging the federal government to take the right action and reduce the exposure to lead. We know lead is a very dangerous chemical for anyone to be exposed to, but particularly for children. It can cause developmental disabilities and other health issues. And so the sooner we get the lead out of the gas, the better.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem McCowen, do you have anything to add?
I do not. I think Councilmember Davis covered it.
Great. Yes, and now you may make a motion.
Make a motion to move.
I'll second. Second.
Yes, Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes, someone who lives next to the freeway, we're very concerned, about these environmental impacts, of the infrastructure and the on residents. And so, being that we also have an airport in our city, there's a lot of residents impacted by this. So I'm really glad that this item came forward, and I'm happy to vote for it.
Any other comments? Any callers?
We have no callers on 13A.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowen.
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Himmelrich.
Yes, so that passes 6-0, and now we're on to 13B. Unless it's already covered and we don't have to do it anymore.
Sorry, no. And we do have a caller for this item. Item 13B is request, well, I guess I could let her read it. Request of Mayor Pro Tem McCowen, Council Members Brock and Davis, that the council receive the update from the Boards and Commission Ad Hoc Committee, approve the recommendation to add appointments to the boards and commissions that will not be impacted by consolidation or reorganization on the November 23rd meeting. So this would include ARB, Building and Fire Life Safety, Audit, Housing, SMTT, Airport, and Rec and Park. Number 3, provide feedback about reducing the Urban Forest Task Force membership from 9 to 7 and the Arts Commission membership from 11 to 7. And 3, to provide any additional recommendations related to the ad hoc committee's continued work reviewing the boards and commissions' procedures. And as I said, we do have one caller for this.
Yes, but let's have Councilmember McCowen introduce this item, and then we'll hear from the caller.
So we will make this very brief because I think the more of this is receiving feedback from council. But we had the opportunity to hold a public meeting to hear from the community about the boards and commissions and sort of what they would like to see. And we had 21 callers that spoke to several different agendized items. And we discussed term limits, consolidation, council members as liaisons, youth, and diversity on our boards and commissions, as well as voting members versus non-voting members, and input from commissioners on future appointments to those commissions. I think the 3 hours was 3 hours very well spent. I believe that we heard from really informed residents that have been really involved in these processes, want to be involved in the board and commission process. And I think we left there, as you can see, with at least one thing that we hope our next council meeting. So we will be taking up appointments on November 23rd. And we will meet again this week prior to, I think, getting pretty close to wrapping up this board and commissions ad hoc. I'm going to let Councilmember Brock and Davis add anything if they'd like, but we really want to hear from you all as to if there are any additional things we should be considering at our next meeting. Councilmember Brock. Oh, sorry.
No, all of our mics are gone.
There you go. You got it.
No, all of our mics are out.
Oh.
So I'll speak loud. I'll speak in my coach's voice.
Here, wait, try it here.
Here, come over here. You can come to mine.
Oh,
wait, mine's off too. Oh, wait, everyone's on again.
Oh, you're on, Phil.
Whatever you did, Denise, good job. Thank you.
no. Oh, mine's on. Hey. So the items that I mentioned in the consent item calendar about term limits, et cetera, I will bring up during our next ad hoc meeting and try and get those included in our final report and our votes coming up in December. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that I haven't forgotten what I said earlier in the meeting. I'm getting old, but not quite that old. Thank you.
Councilmember.
I do have one more thing. I'm sorry. And I just want to let you know, I agree with Councilmember McCowan that the town hall meeting was quite productive. And we heard a lot of things, and we have been rigorous in going over the things that we've heard. So thank you for doing that.
And Councilmember Davis.
I certainly agree with both Mayor Pro Tem McCowan and Councilmember Brock that it was incredibly helpful to hear from the community. I do want to make a couple of comments on the items. One is managing expectations. We do have a history of not doing appointments unless everyone is present, and I regret to inform you I will not be here on November 23rd. I will be on an airplane to Detroit to be with my family for some family matters, including Thanksgiving. So we may not, I don't know, we haven't, I'll have to talk to the mayor pro tem about appointments for that evening. And the other thing I do want to note is that we did want to get feedback, particularly on the reductions for the Urban Forest Task Force from 9 to 7 and the Arts Commission from 11 to 7. I have received some input from arts commissioners in particular that they would like to be, they're happy to be reduced, but would like to be at 9. So just to put that thought in people's thinking process, that as we discuss this, I think the issue for the Urban Forest Task Force from going from 9 to 7 was the issue that they were not having sufficient attendance to make a quorum. So by reducing the numbers, they'd be more likely to get a quorum. That does not appear, from my understanding, to be an issue with the Arts Commission. And as I said, I've heard from several commissioners that they would actually they're happy to be reduced from 11 to 9, but not to 7. They have a series of subcommittees and they want to be able to populate those appropriately. So I'm just throwing those out there as we address these issues going forward.
And now I think we're ready for the public.
Okay, Esther, we're ready for the caller.
Welcome, Denise Barton. You're in the meeting and your time starts now.
Good evening. On the point of putting council liaisons back on boards and commissions, let's go back to the February 21st, 2011 article in the Santa Monica Mirror titled Article Prompt Santa Monica City Council and Liaison Program, where it states the council's decision, which aimed to eliminate potential lawsuits against its members, was based upon an ethics column authored by Sacramento-based attorney Michael Dean in Western Cities, the monthly magazine of the League of California Cities. As innocent as a council member's motives may be, when he or she personally attends a planning or other subordinate committee meeting, he or she may be crossing an ethical boundary, Dean states in this column. Then having use on boards and commissions is a nice idea, but in reality may be harder to do due to their daily schedules. And for a city that is recovering economically, I find Glenn Davis's idea that babysitting be provided for boards and commissions at taxpayer expense shows how out of touch with financial responsibility she really is. Then regarding consolidation of the boards and commissions, all public speakers were against consolidation. And even though it appears that no consolidation will be done, I think it's important to point out Mr. Carey, the Disability Commission founder's comment of combining a disability commission with other commissions didn't work, speaks volumes. So apparently you'd rather make the same mistakes again rather than learning from the past. I also hope you realize by doing this, you are not only wasting the public's time, but but the city council's time as well. Or is this another kind of game trying to distract the public's attention away from other issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton.
There is another caller.
Welcome, Olga Zoroska. You're in the meeting and your time starts now.
Good evening. Regarding the recommendation to make the appointments to the boards and commissions not affected by the work of the ad hoc, I have a request for one of the council members who actually represents the residents. Could you please ask the interim city attorney now publicly why those appointments could not be made tonight, why we have to wait until November 23rd? City Clerk Anderson Warren made a claim at the ad hoc committee meeting that there was a legal issue preventing those appointments from taking place tonight. I do not believe that to be true. I have asked both the clerk and the interim city attorney to provide the alleged legal basis for this delay, but have not received a response. Other appointments have been made since July 27, for example, the appointments to the Personnel Board. Please let the residents know why the rest of the appointments to the boards and commissions not impacted by the ad hoc's work could not have been made tonight. Thank you.
There's no more callers.
So that's the end of the callers. I'm not seeing any response from the city attorney, although I do note that it wasn't agendized tonight and that without item 3G, there would have been a part of the ad hoc program that wouldn't have been implemented tonight had we voted tonight, as I understand it. So it was the plan, and I did listen to that meeting, to have appointments on the 23rd, since Councilmember Davis won't be here on the 23rd, and we do have a custom of only making appointments with the full council. We'll be making appointments the next time we do have a full council, which I suspect will be the first meeting in December. Councilmember Brock.
Our resident who called in, I want to let that resident, all residents know that I persisted in asking the question of why the audit committee, subcommittee person and the housing commission appointments could not be made. I received a number of conflicting reports back, and then received a couple of reports that from staff that made it clear that they could not do at this meeting. And so I will tell you that I think a number of council members asked over the last week or two about making these appointments. It was not just me. It was a majority of the council possibly. It just couldn't be done. And I hope that we'll do it in early December.
And I'll also note that we also don't have a full council and knew we wouldn't have a full council today. So we were not going to be hearing it today. This was an anticipated absence. Councilmember Parra asked me about it a couple of weeks ago, and I, of course, said it was fine. So this was an anticipated and excused absence. Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes, really quick in terms of, we're giving some direction to staff on this item in regards to coming back. And I just want to make sure that we have staff respond to the question that I asked in the, when we voted on the nepotism policy regarding if it's a best practice to include also employee or business partner of a member of, an employee or a business partner of a current city council member.
How about an employer?
An employer also, yeah.
Look, there are loads of categories. I was not involved in this, but there are loads of categories, including conflicts of interest, that we could cover here.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not on the ad hoc. I'm not writing the rules. But when I've seen these rules written, they weren't as targeted as this, which is one of the reasons that I had a very negative reaction to it. It usually does include business partners, employer, employee. I mean, there are loads of relationships that this could cover. I completely agree with you. Or even what if you aren't a domestic partner, but simply are a live-in and have lived together for many, many years, right? I mean, we all are aware of these situations, and it's one of the reasons that, so I agree with you.
Yeah. So, you know, if we can, in terms of getting consensus on the council so that we can give direction to staff, I just wanted to make sure that we get some heads nodding, probably, if that's okay for them to come back to us and tell us if this is a best practice or not to include those categories. Yeah?
If you're giving direction to staff, fine. I mean, as the mayor said, when you review nepotism policies across the country, some are quite narrow and some are very expansive. I mean, and where you might want to be in between that is up to you. There's no, we could explore what a quote best practice is, but I don't know if there's a uniform policy that's in existence that everybody agrees on. It's just.
Even just surrounding cities, I mean, maybe we look at two cities that surround us, what is it that they do? It'd be kind of nice to get that feedback to the council so we can make it
Right.
a determination.
And this is all I'll say. For instance, my understanding that the direction that council gave that prompted the amendment that was before you earlier, you asked or referenced Beverly Hills, and that's the policy that essentially was adopted. But there are other cities have other policies. We're happy to do a survey if that's what you want.
Yes, that would be great.
Anything else? Yeah, well, I think that, no,
I think there's a little bit more that we definitely would like your thoughts on reducing the size of the urban task force membership from 9 to 7. We would definitely like your thoughts on reducing the Arts Commission from 11 to 9, as Councilmember Davis proposed, or 11 to 7, if that's the appetite. We would, I'd also like your thoughts on one thing that came up quite a bit was the liaison issue and the issue of outside, whether or not we should require commissions to submit their opinion formally on recommendations for appointments. I think our thinking, just so that you all know, our thinking was that it should not be a formal requirement of a commission to advise us on who they think on the applicant list would be well suited for the commission, but we welcome their calling in or submitting written comment when it's agendized. Councilmember Brock has.
I think I would be the minority vote on that in our ad hoc, but we used to have some commissions that would interview candidates and give their feedback, I think up till 2014. And I was frankly appalled at the practice of a commission interviewing the successors they want on the commission, because I felt that was a way that we were just going to keep it into a very tight circle. You weren't going to bring on someone who disagreed with you and might have a different way of doing business on that commission. That stopped the commissions from having the creative thought process that we absolutely desire from our boards and commissions. So I am all in favor anytime of an individual commissioner writing and saying, I know this person, I believe they'd be a great commissioner. But some commissions, and I can think of a couple that used to literally try and appoint their successors. And I think Mayor Himmelrich and I discussed that a couple of times, 6-7 years ago.
I have always agreed, as I say all the time, right, I say it about the council and I say it about the boards and commissions, this is not a sorority, right? We are not, and now with our new and better supported and research knowledge, that diverse groups make better decisions, and I think this council is a testament to that. I think that that is a great argument for not having commissions pick who's on them.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Negrete.
I do want to agree with the amendment for the Arts Commission that it not go from 11 to 7, but to maintain diversity, go to 9, just so that we can make sure that we have all the parties that are necessary. I mean, we are Santa Monica. Arts is a big deal. And then I just wanted to ask one more thing. Was the talk, did you guys speak about at all having, I don't want to call it youth on these boards and commissions?
Yes, we did. And there was general consensus, I believe, that, if I recall correctly in the notes I'm looking at, that we want to look into possibly shorter terms for youth. We want to, I think that we disagreed that youth should not have voting rights. we
I had nothing,
did, because that came up a couple of times, and
not from our ad hoc commissioners.
yeah, it came up, a few callers raised it, whether or not.
In the town hall.
Yeah, in the town hall, whether or
Not
not
from
the youth members would have a voting right or not. I think we talked about it in that session, and I believed at least what I noted was that they should have voting rights. But I don't want to speak for all three
And I
members.
still believe that there's any way that we could do it, that we try and formulate over time a Santa Monica Youth Commission as well.
And we also talked about, I think we all agreed that they should be voting members, and we talked about strategies to try and encourage more young people to become commission members. For example, we talked about reaching out to people we know at SMC and perhaps even having commission membership be part of their political science program, something they could get credit for, something like that, and that sort of thing, trying to meet the youth where they were.
Yeah, Samuel High, Crossroads,
Yeah. and
St.
there-
Monica's, et cetera.
There was a clear consensus that the goal is just more voices in the room, even if it is for a shorter amount of time. And, on the issue of consolidation, and one of the callers brought this up too, so I want to just sort of, it seemed very overwhelming that there was not a strong desire to consolidate, but there is, at least from the public that called in to this particular meeting. And we obviously recognize what was in the staff recommendation, so we're still dealing with that and
we'll
haven't
get
made
there.
any formal decisions about that yet to recommend to you all.
I just wanted to make the point that as we narrow who can be on the commissions, and as we need to recognize that some of these aren't as easy to fill. So as we talk about term limits and narrowing it, that's something to consider as well when we're reducing the size that maybe the public doesn't realize. It might become even more difficult to find members as we reduce who can be on there. We limit that. But I'm really glad to hear about the youth specific, commission that's just comprised of youth in our community. I look forward to hearing more about that.
And I think they'd rather go to that commission than the other commissions. I mean, I did this when I was in high school, some, countywide commission. And I just, to the extent we have a youth commission, I think it would be more attractive to youth and than being on these adult commissions where.
Their voices and heard.
Anyway,
So I thank you guys for adding that. I mean, I think it's on our radar for sure. It's been raised. Whether or not it's its own commission or part of this sort of a subset of this like possible diversity, more broad diversity commission that includes youth as a subcommittee, all that's still being worked through, but this is helpful feedback.
Does this need to be an amendment?
I did want to address on the Urban Forest Task Force, and I don't know if you would address this, but I think at least two of you, so we expanded that because we made a mistake in the appointment. I think that we barred somebody from it who we thought hadn't done ethics, so that was why we expanded that commission. But I think it was originally 7, but yes, it was 7. And I think that if all 9 people don't want to come back, I think that's a commission that could go back to 7.
That's helpful feedback. I think that seems to be the consensus of the ad hoc, but we'll take that back, and it'll be in our formal recommendations most likely. I think that's all we have.
Yeah.
Unless.
I have one question.
Oh, yeah.
Do we provide childcare for those who might need it to participate in a board or commission?
No, and that came up. Councilmember Davis, do you want to? Thank you.
No, we don't. And some cities do in order to encourage participation by families, particularly with young children. I mean, obviously, there's a cost associated with it. And I think that's something we'd have to talk to staff about. But I think it's something that maybe we think about in the future, maybe rolling out with commissions that for example, it would seem to me the Commission on the Status of Women would be a good pilot to run that. So we can try and get women with young children or something, but it's obviously got a cost involved with it. And I think that's something staff would have to think about, but we do not do that. We don't provide childcare for city council meetings of people who want to come talk when we're meeting in person, so.
Go ahead.
On that note, I wonder, are we going to maintain the ability to come in on Zoom? Because if you had a small child, then.
Yeah, we already passed that.
Okay, I'm just making sure. That might solve that issue before it comes up.
That's true. That's a good one. But it'd be something, I mean, if everybody feels okay with it, just to get some numbers back maybe, or an assessment. What if we surveyed and we only find out that 3 people serving could potentially increase their participation with that type of support? Maybe we can provide it, you know?
Are you saying you're going to babysit?
Yeah. I'm down. Yeah, they can drop them off at my house.
So did you guys have any discussion of what I heard in that meeting, the 2 or 3 hours that you were on, that I heard a general public sentiment against consolidation, against instead having more public participation, but no discussion, and maybe this is what we need to do, about how to limit how much work staff has to do in connection with the meetings. Because I think that we may have be turning our boards and commissions meetings into mini council meetings, when in fact they're supposed to be advisory, they're supposed to come up with ideas, but whether they need to be fully staffed at every meeting is a whole different idea. Yeah, Councilmember Davis.
We did discuss that a bit, and then people should know that prior to the public meeting, we did meet with staff to get staff's input, and they provided us with some pretty compelling statistics to show the number of hours that they have to spend to prepare for and attend, and then do the post-hoc drafting of minutes, et cetera, for meetings. And it is quite a substantial investment. We didn't come to any consensus, but I think one of the things we discussed, for example, is some of the boards and commissions have reasons to meet on a monthly basis, but others do not. So could we maintain the commissions, but not have them maybe meet on an ad hoc basis, for example, when an issue is coming before council that they should have some input on, or for the ones that maybe don't have the same number of pressing issues, could they be arranged to meet every 2 months or quarterly or something like that, which would obviously reduce some staff investment. We didn't fall on any solution, but we did talk about those as options.
And I think part of that is we had the public meeting. That was our most recent meeting of the 3 of us. That ended, and we have our next the 3 of us, our next meeting is scheduled on Thursday. And so that's when we were hoping to take sort of some feedback from you all. I know some participated and listened into the public town hall, but couldn't talk to us about it until tonight. And then to take that feedback, and then we'll go and sort of discuss follow-up from the public town, and hopefully get closer to wrapping this up.
Well, so one thing I wanted to add, which you may not be aware of, is that during the pandemic, the Housing Commission did continue to meet without staff, and were able to do it. They actually, somebody acted as the secretary, and they moved forward without it. So I'm not sure that we need to staff each of these commissions the way we've been staffing.
100% agree. I think it's gonna, should we go down that route, I think there's gonna have to be a sea change in sort of how we, sort of teach commissioners what we share as the expectation of the role. Again, we don't want to make it so cumbersome that we don't get volunteers. Right. We want it to be realistic, but we also want to reduce the burden on staff, which is why the concept of liaisons for certain committees seems to be one that we've been open to, limiting so that we don't get into jeopardy with that situation from the past, limiting sort of the number of committees and other things. But I think we're trying to find workarounds, and I think the Housing Commission did that successfully, and is a good example of what's possible with, well, We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And so what do we do? Receive and file? How do we, yeah, so I move we receive and file the report and our recent discussion concerning the ad hoc.
I'll second.
So moved by Himmelrich, seconded by Brock. Let's have a roll call.
Mayor, can I, well, let me ask the council for clarification. So I heard, and please, let me know. So I heard that there is a field to reduce the Urban Forest Task Force from 9 to 7, and then the Arts Commission from 11 to 9. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing is that the appointments, and so just to let you guys know, the appointment process has been open since June, which is when we were supposed to do the annual appointments. However, we've heard from members of the public that they have not applied because they don't want to apply if they're not going to be considered. So there's a process that we need to notice and let people know that they are applying. So I want to make certain that we do that with proper timing. So I just want to clarify that these boards and commissions that have been recommended here, the appointment will be on the first meeting in December.
Well, so let's, I will be here the first weekend. Who will not be here the first week in December?
That's December 7th, I believe is the
December 7th. Good. We'll do it the first week in December. Nobody is allowed off that night.
Do not get COVID.
Nothing, do not get
Styles
sick,
concert.
no sick children, no sick parents, right? Nothing, right?
No, we're all vaccinated the way we
And
should
I'm
be.
writing to Christine about this.
Okay. Okay. That's all,
She
that's
must
all I
be
need.
here, right? No college tours either, right? So,
Okay, so that's what I needed for clarification. Thank you. Okay, so now we can start the vote. Councilmember
what?
Davis?
Hold on one sec.
Oh, sorry.
If we can go back 1 minute, I apologize.
Oh, yes, there's one important thing.
There was one item that we wanted to add. All commissioners and board members also have to follow the city vaccination policies. So I appeal to all of our boards and commissioners to make sure they're vaccinated or receive an exemption in a timely fashion, because we want you to be able to remain on our boards and commissions and contribute to our city. Thank you.
Well, and I think too, it's possibly having the mayor send a letter. We have this policy. It went into effect. We have compliance within our city departments. We need to get compliance with our boards and commissions. And I think it's time. I think, assuming there's agreement on this dais, that.
Well, the deadline is gone. Your deadline was October 27th. Is that right? 29th, I'm sorry. Your deadline was October 29th. That deadline has passed. So if you aren't vaccinated and you are on a board or commission, then your risk of no longer being on that board or commission. I mean, we have not done anything about this because we do believe that people should receive ample warning, but you can consider this your first ample warning. The people who are not vaccinated and don't have exemptions will not be on our boards and commissions. It's that simple. So, and I'll be sending a letter to that effect. But this is public service, and we're doing this for the members of our public.
Thank you, Mayor.
And now, shall we vote?
Okay. Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Negrete.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McCowen.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes.
And Mayor Himmelrich.
Yes, and we would push our buttons, Denise, but they aren't green.
And a very funny thing is happening on our screens.
Yes, I see that too. How did that happen? Isn't that
It's not
hilarious?
matching your screen.
What happened?
Wait, do you have the same one?
Yeah,
Jen?
we all do.
We balled.
Oh, Jenna? Oh, no, wait, what?
So does that mean we've been hacked or?
McEwen and Hara?
Councilmember Parr.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, it is this item,
You're
right?
right. It's
That's
very
weird.
interesting.
Yes, because Councilmember Brock is on it, right? So
And it says it up there, but on our screens it says.
it does say motion made by
McEwen and Hara.
seconded by Hara.
Wow.
And Denise just removed all evidence of that, right? Thank you.
Okay, so next we have public input. Public comment is permitted only on items not on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. State law prohibits the city council from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item, and I believe we have 3 callers.
You're welcome.
Esther, we're ready for the callers.
I mean, it depends on how many calls we have.
Welcome, Denise Barton. You're in the meeting and your time starts now.
Good evening. You remember my public input at the last City Council meeting, October 26, 2021, right? Let me refresh your memory. It was about the NRDC building at 1314 2nd Street and the negative effects of the permitted deviations from the Santa Monica Municipal Code. The raising of the south side of the building and the bright, glaring, unshielded LED light, which only negatively affects the 4 third floor affordable housing units on the north side of the 1318 2nd Street. So the raising of the building deviates from Santa Monica Municipal Code 9.21.050, fences, walls, and hedges. Section A, height, under number 4, downtown specific plan, part C, that walls or fences at or behind building above 42 inches in height shall be a minimum 50% transparent. And the light deviates from 5.1F of the downtown specific plan, that lighting sources shall be shielded, aiming light downward or back at the building or wall to reduce glare, as well as the Santa Monica Municipal Code 9.21.080, lighting. Section C, General Standards, Part 2, Non-Residential Buildings, Part 3, Shielding, and Part 4, Light Trespass. So I would believe that this constitutes discrimination against affordable housing tenants who are seniors and disabled protected classes, violating the Fair Housing Act of 42 USC 361, also known as Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of Civil Rights 24 CFR Part 100, where it lists discrimination as providing housing that's different from that provided to others. Then, since it's the city that's approved and permitted this planning that's discriminatory, might it also fall under subject anyone to segregation or disparate treatment? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton, and thank you for speaking so we could hear. We appreciate it.
Welcome, Jonathan Foster. You're in the meeting and your time starts now.
Hi, Jonathan Foster. Aren't you all glad you're not aborted? Boy, or didn't abort your own children. I thought it was still very upsetting. If anybody was upset with me, you can be upset with me. I appreciated the girl sticking up for me. It was very nice. It was a word used a few meetings, umbrage. The mayor had umbrage, took umbrage with the gleam. Boy, what a East Coast word, a deep English Baltimore government word, umbrage. I've taken umbrage with all of you. Yeah, that's a great word. It basically, it's amazing. Still calling about Promenade 3.0, and what's happening out there with me since I've been out there. Some of the worst stuff happened between 2000 and 2004, so long ago. Most of you probably weren't really around here. And it's amazing how what Israel is doing to kill humans so that they can chop off a bull's head in a building in Jerusalem. And this is really sick. This is really, really sick. You got people on radio here I listen to, there's like Prager and Levin and Ben Shapiro. They all say that America is the greatest country on earth, except for no Jew thinks that America is the greatest place on earth. All Jews think Israel is the greatest place on earth. So Prager is a liar. Mark Levin's a liar. Ben Shapiro's a liar. These people, Bob Iger with his AT&T and his Disney crap, he's another liar. And Third Street's just the biggest liar too. It's just I didn't know this. You see, I didn't know that that's what it was, a big liar. I've been trying to be, be nice to people out there, thinking.
Do we have any more callers?
No more callers.
Then we have adjournments. Phil?
It is. Denise, can you put that picture up? Thank you so much. It is with great sadness that we adjourn tonight's City Council meeting in memory of Los Angeles Times and Santa Monica Evening Outlook photographer and writer Bill Beebe. Now, Bill was born in Los Angeles, but then later he moved as a child to the city of Santa Monica. But before finishing high school at Savile High, he enlisted in the Navy, and later in 1946 became one of the first students to major in photographer at what was then known as Santa Monica City College. Bill's career as a photographer and author spanned more than 6 decades. He worked for publications such as the Los Angeles Mirror, the LA Times, the Santa Monica Evening Outlook. I met him when I was working at the Outlook. Bill retained the rights to all the images he produced while working for the Outlook, and as you can see on the screen right now, he made this iconic, absolutely iconic photograph of President Kennedy coming out of the surf somewhere around what we would call today Station 6. And as he was president of the United States, he took a little dip to do some body surfing, and security was a lot less existent back then. But in 1998, when the Evening Outlook closed, he donated his collection of more than 100,000 photography negatives to the Santa Monica History Museum, and his collection is known there. Obviously, the crowning achievement was the picture of President Kennedy. But, you know, he wrote a Saturday column every Saturday in the sports pages of the Evening Outlook, and he told you when the trout fishing season started at Crowder Lake, when the fish were biting off the fishing boats that used to go out from Santa Monica Pier. And he was just an exceptional person, absolutely exceptional. He was lauded during his life by many. And the good thing about Bill is his pictures will live on through the centuries. He is survived by his wife of 71 years, Sonia, his daughter, Suzanne, his son, Bill, grandchildren, Brett and Krista. On behalf of our entire Santa Monica community, we convey to Bill's family, his extensive network of friends, our deepest condolences and thanks for contributing so much to the history of Santa Monica.
And now I have an adjournment. And it is in memory of SMER co-founder, steering committee, and longtime SMER treasurer, Roger Thornton, who died unexpectedly from a heart attack on October 27th. He was almost 80 years old. Roger and his wife, Chris, have 2 daughters, Jennifer and Stephanie, and 2 grandchildren, Logan and Amelia. In 1978, Roger was a member of Tom Hayden and Jane Fonda's Campaign for Economic Democracy when he and Chris came over to Cheryl Roden's apartment one evening after we lost the first Santa Monica rent control campaign. Denny Zane, also a CED member, recognized Roger, who joined the meeting and became a member for life. A few years ago, Roger was giving a speech for election to the steering committee, and he said, "The day that rent control passed was the best day of my life, and what a party we had that night." At that time, SMER was a coalition of 4 groups: Santa Monica Fair Housing Alliance, Santa Monica Democratic Club, and the Committee for Fair Rents and CED. SMER had lost the first campaign because of lack of money, lack of experience, and lack of volunteers. But with Rogers and CED's help, SMER won rent control in Santa Monica on April 10th, 1979. Roger was funny, he was smart and skilled. He was a master of the quick but funny one-liner. He became a real trooper, although he had been a Navy swift boater during the war on Vietnam. He eventually learned to understand hard to understand computer languages. At a meeting with Denny Zane in computer programming Michael Adams at the Brandywine Cafe on Lincoln in 1979, Roger was bitten by the data bug big time. He learned the computer skills needed to enable SMER to do highly sophisticated, targeted direct mail to Santa Monica voters, maintained our membership list, set up newsletters, managed SMER finances and campaign reporting as a treasurer for over 30 years. And by the way, he was my treasurer for a short time in 2014. And it was a great experience. In executive committee meetings, he argued strongly for what he thought was the best course. He could be cranky and had a temper, as we all do, but it mellowed over the years. In 1978, it wasn't long after that first meeting before Roger also joined the Ocean Park Perspective, a small activist local newspaper. Roger learned how to do newspaper layout and production. The paper was delivered by activists' hand to every door in Ocean Park. The first article about rent control in Santa Monica appeared in the first issue of the Perspective. We will miss Roger Thornton. I will miss Roger Thornton. Because of his work and the work of other SMER activists, tens of thousands of Santa Monica renters have lived their lives with a level of security renters in few communities have experienced. Thank you, our brother Roger. We will miss you. And this meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting is on November 23rd at 5:30 p.m. Thank you all. Good night.